Hey, what's going on, guys? Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins. Welcome to drboycetv.com, the home for intelligent Black people. Today, I have this really sad story. It's a story that I found on a site called Hollywood Unlocked, and they told a story about a woman who named Megan, who did this viral TikTok video in which she basically says that her father took his own life because she married a black man. This really sort of hit me because I think there are a few things to unpack in terms of how much guilt children need to carry for what their parents want, and it just inspired me to talk about it. And my wife is actually an expert on this topic. This is when my wife and I went to Guyana years ago. You guys may or may not remember this. Some of you who've been riding with us for a minute, you remember my wife, who is a brilliant professor, did a fellowship with what they call a Fulbright, and we had to go to Guyana, and we stayed in Guyana for a whole semester. And the reason we were there is because Guyana has a big problem with people taking their own lives, and this was years after the whole Jim Jones. I think this is a picture when we were there at that time, and you remember Jim Jones was in Guyana, and they had that whole mass Kool-Aid incident back in the day, and so anyway, she was obviously disturbed by this, and so was I. So I'll just kind of give you the lowdown in terms of what happened here. First off, I should also start the day by greeting everybody. I want to say, hey, what's up to my B1 people, all the Black First types. Put your B1 in the chat. Let the world know that you love yourself, and it's okay to love Black. You ain't got to hate white people. Just love yourself. That's what I want you to do. And so here's what was interesting about this story. So Megan, who's the lady in this picture, she married this guy. I don't know his name. He looks almost a little bit like Dr. Dre, like a young Dr. Dre or something. That's what I first thought, but then maybe upon closer examination, perhaps not. But anyway, she's in love with the Coco. She loves black men like the rest of the world does. Give me a yes in the chat if black men are the creme de la creme in terms of attraction. I know that we are the shit, and I know this. And black women are right there with us. You're the most beautiful creatures on the entire planet. I don't care what nobody has to say about that. And so she met this guy and married him. And she goes on TikTok and she puts up this really interesting post, which was kind of sad, but there's a couple things to unpack on this. And she says, she puts it up here. She says, when people ask how your dad died and you tell them he unalived himself because you married a black man and now half of your family doesn't talk to him because they blame you. Let me just stop right there. When people ask how your dad died and you tell them he unalived himself because you married a black man, first of all, I really hate the idea that she feels like she has to go to TikTok to address this. I just, I'm not saying that it's that she shouldn't do it. It's her right, but you need to be talking to your therapist about this, to be honest with you. Like, I don't really know if social media, and this is really my little Uncle Boyce thought for young people listening. The people on social media really don't give that much of a damn about you. And I really think that when you're talking about something as sacred and as serious as your relationship with your family, I don't really know if this needs to be addressed on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and none of that. I get it. I get it. You're feeling some kind of way and you kind of let it out. But this is not. This is. I don't know if this is it. I really, and I'm really more concerned for her, not so much for her family. Clearly, her family has some issues, but especially when she says that half of her family doesn't talk to her husband because they blame him. I think they need to be educated on why people do things like what her father did. This is a mental health issue that her father had. It's not her fault. Like that's probably if she were my friend, my friend's daughter, or just some lady I knew on TikTok. First thing I would tell her is it ain't your fault. You can't. And this is really true. I think for any young person out here, some of y'all got parents that are just trifling. Some of y'all got parents that haven't grown up. Some of y'all have parents that are still dealing with their issues from childhood. And I say this as a 51-year-old man. I'm a grown ass man. I'm not a kid anymore, right? So I'm in that space. I have adult children. And I just want you to know I've seen this. I've seen children get into their 20s, you're starting your life. You're trying to go out and you're a squirrel trying to get a nut. You're trying to find a way to make a way. You're trying to figure it all out in your 20s. And you've got this like 50-year-old vagabond of a parent who is still holding on to stuff that happened in the 1980s and is dumping it all on you. Blaming it on you. Some of y'all, has anybody ever seen this? Give me a yes or no if you ever seen this. Sometimes you even have parents that are like jealous of their children. Has anybody ever like seen? I mean, it's weird. You'll have parents that are competitive with their kids, jealous of their kids, or like I know one young lady. Every time she talks, she calls her mom to tell her about something great that happened in her life. Her mom flips it and makes the conversation about her and her life. Or she'll talk about her dating situation, and her mom will start talking about the guy she's dating. Her mom was like 55 years old. And it's like, and I get it, like I think that, you know, young people that have parents, you got to understand that just because your parents are over 40 or over 50, their life hasn't stopped. They're still living, they're still figuring some things out. But as an act of maturity, there has to be a point where it ain't about you no more. It ain't about your feelings and what you want. It's about your kids. Your kids should go first. And I hope that we can at least agree on this platform that kids should be first. I think that's why you have so much, trauma amongst these kids. I think this is why the Gen Zs struggle so much, is because maybe the Gen Xers, which would be people like us born, I guess, in the 70s and the early 80s, maybe we were taught to focus so much on ourselves that we don't think about the kids. Arrested development, Terry Cobb, great term. I like that term. I that arrested development where it's like, okay, because you did not go get therapy over something that happened to you when you were young, you put that on your kids. You're even picking who your kids should be allowed to marry. And I just don't think that's cool. I really think it's trifling, pathetic, and I don't get it. But maybe it's because my parents always let us feel like our lives were important. That what we were going through was more important than whatever stuff they were trying to figure out as 45, 50-year olds. So I don't know. I kind of don't. I really felt some kind of way about this idea that this girl's father would um, take his life because of something like this. And I also wonder if the father said this, like if the father said, "I'm going to take my own life because you married a black man," or if the family members just came up with that interpretation. Like I'd like to know where she got that message from, like who told her that, right? And then also the relatives that are not speaking to him and probably aren't really speaking to her because they're blaming him for what another man did. Those relatives should all be pimp slapped, like every single one of them. How dare you blame a child for the fact that her father had a mental health issue? It just really bothers me. And I know most of you don't have parents that would do this, and most of you wouldn't do this. A lot of you are parents and you wouldn't do this. So obviously this is an extreme case, but you do have some parents out here that will put their emotional weight on top of a child. You got some parents out here that will make their children feel guilty. Like mama and daddy can't pay the rent, so the child gets a good job in their 20s, and the parents are like blowing up the phone, forcing the child to send money back. I had a friend when I got my PhD. Finance professors make a lot of money. I was the highest paid on my entire campus when I taught at Syracuse University, and I had a friend who was from Mississippi who finished her doctorate around the same time. And we would talk, and I remember her telling me, like I said, yeah. So what are you going to do with your money? We were making, I mean, big money, like at least compared to what we made in grad school. When you're a grad student, you broke. So you spend years busting your butt, so that hopefully one day you can get that good job. So we get the good job, we're making the money, and and I'm like, yeah, when I get my money, I'm gonna buy me a this, and I'm gonna invest in that. And I said, what are you gonna do with your money? And she said, I don't have any money. I said, what are you talking about? We make 130,000 a year, 125,000, whatever we're making. Actually, I'm sorry, my first job I made 115. I think she made a little more than me, like 125, 130, which is still a lot of money today, but it was definitely a lot of money 20 years ago. And she said she was always broke. She said, I don't have any money. I said, why? She said, because I have to send half my paycheck to my parents because they're always behind on the bills. They always, so they'll be 6 months behind on the mortgage. They always have a financial problem. And I just thought that was sad. I really do, and so it's really, I guess why am I doing this conversation today? One, because I feel bad for this poor little girl. And their husband. I mean, man, dude, like, why would you, bro? Like, you must really love this lady. I told y'all, no disrespect to white women, but I told y'all years ago before I married my wife, I'm not marrying anybody other than a black woman. It's not a hatred toward white women. It's just a love for black women. I always had a loyalty and a commitment to black women because I had a loyalty and commitment to my mother. When I was 16 years old, my mother, she told me, she let me know that black women have a hard time finding, quality men to marry. Now, whether that was true or not, you can debate that, but that was her perception. And at that moment, I said to myself, when I get married, I'm gonna make sure I marry a black woman. And so that was my personal perspective. But everybody in my family doesn't feel that way. I got drilled on Twitter because I have a grandson that's half white, and my daughter, who's my adopted daughter, and I love her. I love her to death. Love her to the ends of the earth. She married a very nice white boy from Denmark, a super nice guy. He respects the family. He understands I'm the leader of the family, and he doesn't come in with that racism nonsense. So that, as long as you're not trying to oppress me, I'm cool. Like, I don't dislike white people. I don't. I just don't like oppression. So you could be white. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you come in here with that white supremacy stuff, then we have an issue, right? He doesn't do that, right? He kisses the ring. He gives respect. He treats her well, and it's fine. And here's the funny thing to me is that sometimes you have these blackety black people on the internet who think that a father is supposed to pick who their daughter marries. They think that because I'm her father, I'm supposed to tell her, I'm putting my foot down and I will not allow you to marry that man. Well, if you ever talk like that, if you ever talk that type of shit, I just want to tell every father in here, if you come in there with that nonsense, you're going to lose your child. Give me a yes in the chat if you understand where I'm coming from. If you come in there trying to pick who your child uh, can marry or be with because you somehow think that whatever amount of respect they're giving you, that's like a blank check, that you have a blank check on obedience, you're going to lose your child. And then what's going to really be bad for you is that she's going to fall more in love with that guy because you told her who she can't date. Young girls, they gotta have a natural rebellious spirit. They're gonna go the exact opposite direction that you try to tell them to go, because you coming in here with um, that hyper masculine, almost toxic patriarchal kind of perspective. Now, I don't think the word patriarchy is a bad word, just like I don't think matriarchy is a bad word. But if you were to ask my perspective on it, I would say that patriarchy is is actually okay in families that agree that male leadership is important, which I think a smart family does. But there is such a thing, in my view, as toxic patriarchy. Toxic patriarchy is where you are trying to control the lives of everybody else because you somehow have been lied to and convinced that your feelings are the only feelings that matter. Somebody told you that because you the daddy, that you get whatever you want, and that how other people feel is not important. And now this girl's father took his own life, but I know a lot of fathers who lose their whole damn family because they don't know how to listen to nobody. You don't know how to evolve. You don't know how to take other people's feelings into consideration. You don't know how to be. You think being empathetic is somehow. I talked to a guy one time who told me that he said the word empathy is feminine, and that masculine men aren't empathetic. And I said that you're a dumbass. I said, I said, I said, I said, if you're really a man, then you should be able to adapt and evolve, and you should connect and elevate your family by any means necessary. So you got to have the mental toughness to know that sometimes you got to adjust a little bit. You can't sort of be this emotionally unavailable rock wall everywhere you go and think that people are going to want to be around you. People are going to walk away from you. They're going to be like, man, I love my daddy, but he ain't shit. He's an asshole because I told him how I felt and he didn't even listen to me. A good father will listen to his daughter's feelings and respect that. Give me a yes in the chat if you agree with that. Any man who does not agree that a good father will listen to his daughter's feelings and respect them is not a father to me. Chances are your daughter don't want nothing to do with you. You know, and so when I think about this guy, first off, I'm really really mad. Let me just share this. Actually, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. Thumbs up, share, subscribe if you haven't done it yet. And we're talking about this lady named Megan who went on TikTok and told the world that her father took his own life because she married a black man. And the first point I made was that I don't think it's cool that she even told TikTok. I wouldn't tell. I mean, I think this is so sensitive and so important. I mean, you're talking about family and legacy and a broken family, really. Their kids won't have access to their grandfather. This to me is too serious to be taken to TikTok. I think that there's some things you just don't really talk about on social media, and also anybody who's dealing with family chaos like this. And I do know a black family who where the girl was 16 and her father took his own life, and he was an alcoholic and who beat her mother. And I remember asking her, I said, how did you feel when your father took his life and you were a teenager? And she said, actually, I was relieved. She said, and I said, relieved? I said, that's kind of a surprising response. And she said, I was relieved because I knew that if he was gone, I wouldn't have to deal with him beating up my mother anymore. And so there are kids out here dealing with real stuff from parents that have never dealt with their stuff. And this is me really begging anybody who is dealing with this stuff to really go talk to some of these therapists out here. You got some real good therapists in your community that can really help you. They can work with you as an individual, they can work with you as a couple, and they can work with you as a family. And I really think that in our community, especially with all the trauma that we experience, um, all of us should talk to a therapist, because therapists have good coping tools that can help you figure out how to process your trauma without it destroying your life, without it causing you to date one terrible man after another. Even not having a daddy in the house is traumatic. And 76% of all black children don't even have a father in the house. Having a daddy, I don't care if your daddy was down the street or if he came to visit you once a month or he sent your mama money for Pampers every 2 weeks or whatever, or he paid child support for 18 years. I'm sorry, not having your father in the house, waking you up each morning and saying, hey, what do you want for breakfast? Or make sure you get up for school. That right there is a type of trauma that people don't realize how much that affects how you choose to date, and it affects all your relationships for the rest of your life. And I'm not even talking about all the other crazy stuff that happens in our families. So I'm a big fan of therapy, man. And I really hope that people will consider it. And I'll even throw myself out there by saying that I have a therapist that I talk to for my relationship because that's an investment. I'm an investor, and the biggest investments that I make are not financial. I own stock in hundreds of companies. I own lots of real estate. I own different businesses. But the biggest investments I make have nothing to do with money. The biggest investments I make have nothing to do with the money in my bank account. The biggest investments I make have to do with people. The biggest investments I make have to do with physical health, getting up and jogging every a couple of days so I don't keel over and die. Right at the peak of my life. The biggest investments I make have to do with mental health. Paying that therapist every week, that's an investment. I'm investing in me when I talk to my therapist and figure out, like, okay, how do I deal with this? How do I manage that? How do I cope with some of the challenges that come with the life that I have? There are lots of constant problems that have to be solved. As a man, I don't know about other men, but I believe that the best thing I ever did as a man was to learn mathematics and chess and strategy. And I'm not a big chess player, but I understand strategy. I play a lot of poker. I'm a really good poker player. I've won big tournaments and stuff with hundreds of people in them. And the reason that has been an asset for me is because I'm always solving problems. If you got kids, you solving problems. If you're trying to, pay the bills and build wealth at the same time, you're always solving problems. When you are in your 40s and 50s, I don't know how many men or women we have in their 40s and 50s, but they say the 40s and 50s are your hardest time of your life because you're in, I think they call it the sandwich generation, where you are taking care of elderly parents and simultaneously taking care of children at the same time. So you got to be looking up and looking down, right? Looking up and looking down. So you're solving problems for a lot of people. So a man, if you want to raise good men, in my opinion, teach them how to solve problems. That way they can face up to, and then also teach them how to have courage to face the problem. You got to face it, and then you got to solve it. And because that makes a big difference, because that's how you can get through it without saying, okay, I give up. I'm gonna sit in the basement and smoke weed for the rest of my life, or I'm going to take my own life, or I'm going to go and just abandon the family because I can't solve this problem. So manhood, in my view, a lot of it, and adulthood in general, because women have their, Lord knows women have a lot of problems to solve also. So I admit I have a bias, a slight bias. I am speaking as a man. But problem solving is a day-to-day thing that I deal with. And so having my therapist helps me because I can take my problems and get a perspective from another smart person who understands how to listen, who can give me tools. So I can say, okay, this person's making me mad. I really want to cuss them out, but I don't want to ruin the relationship. How do I talk to this person in a way that doesn't ruin the relationship? Or I'm feeling this kind of way and I don't really know how to bring it up. How do I bring it up without it causing chaos? So get you a therapist, man. And then if you're trying to have a relationship and invest in another person and spend your life with another person, I mean, I really think couples counseling is good. It'll teach you how to talk to each other without trying to kill each other or abandon each other on the sidewalk. And then family wise, I mean, obviously this girl needs, well, she could have used family therapy. I think now it's pretty much, I don't know. I think this would be hard to kind of patch up. They might have to just start from scratch and work with their kids. But I really kind of feel bad over the fact that she has relatives that won't speak to her or speak to him because they're blaming her and him for what this old man did. No, this old man made his own choice. He was a sucker. He was a punk. He couldn't handle change. He didn't respect his daughter enough to respect her decision. But also I would ask the brother, like, I don't even know if I'd even want to marry into a family like this. I think that what you marry into, um, you got to think about that too. Remember, when you marry somebody, you're not just marrying the person, you're marrying their whole family. So if you are a very nice white lady and you got this racist father who might take his own life because he don't like black people, because he's that concerned about his daughter laying down with a black dude, why would I subject myself to that? I want a father-in-law who's going to be supportive and uplifting and a cool dude and helpful and all this other stuff. I don't want a father-in-law who's going to greet me with scorn and contempt every time he sees me. And really, this is another thing too. This is important. My wife actually shared this with me because my wife is a therapist actually. So this is why I come in, with all this random information. Did you know that people who are greeted on a regular basis with contempt, that they die younger? Did you know that? That if somebody that like if you're married to somebody or dating somebody, and my wife told me this, that's my wife right there. Dr. Alicia Watkins. I'll give you her website, by the way, and she, in case you want to see kind of the work that she does. Um, but did you know that people who get greeted with contempt, um, from people that are close to them, that they actually die younger? They literally die earlier than people who are loved and appreciated and respected. Like, so contempt can like take your life, like, so so because it's stressful. Like every time I see you, like you mean mugging me, and you like give me that gangster look, and I'm trying to be your friend, I'm trying to connect with you, and you just hate me for no reason. Like that's so you want to be in spaces where you're loved. That's my point. You want to be in spaces where, like, so what I would say to this brother here that married this lady is, I'm not judging anybody's marital choices. People can choose what they want. But I would probably say to him, I'd say, man, bro, like, wouldn't you rather be in a space where they love you because you're black, as opposed to being in a space where they'll tolerate you in spite of the fact that you're black? Right? They're tolerating you. They don't want you around, So and I get it though. It's like, okay, I love my wife and I respect that part, but you got to think about what you're marrying into. And so I would encourage anybody, like, to me, if I'm young and I was dating again, I wouldn't look at an individual person as an individual. I would look at them as part of a unit, like almost like a gang, right? Like if I'm hanging out with a Crip, I'm not just seeing like, okay, that's my friend Tyrone. That it's like, no, that's my friend Tyrone who's a Crip. So that means that if I'm hanging out with Tyrone the Crip, that means I'm engaging with other Crips. Or if you're an alpha and you're connected to your fraternity, then I'm gonna be hanging out with other alphas, or whatever, right? And I think that family is the same way. When you marry somebody, you really are marrying their family. You're gonna be around their relatives. Their relatives will be bringing problems to you that they may ask you to help solve. I have a homeboy who got shot in the head in front of his daughter because his brother-in-law was a drug dealer. This is real stuff. This is real life. I'm not kidding. He literally died. Like he's been gone 25 years, and it's a lot of it's because his brother-in-law was into some, into some gangster shit, and he had no idea. Like, so what you are around can affect you as much as what you do. You know, so these are my thoughts here. So if you want to know kind of the lowdown in terms of what happened to Megan when she went to TikTok and explain to everybody why her father took his own life, I'll share. Actually, I'm gonna share the screenshot in 1 second. If you could take 1 second, everybody. If you could please hit the thumbs up button, thumbs up, share, subscribe, and also I have a new book out. It's called The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. It is a guide for any Black family that wants to build a generational wealth legacy. This book will turn your family into an economic powerhouse. It's based on financial research. As you guys know, I spent 13 years on the faculty at Syracuse University, and we've educated millions of people around the world on how to invest. And we're doing it well. We're getting it done. We've gone all around the world. This is us speaking in London. And so we're good at what we do. We're very good at what we do in the Black Business School, and I'd love to support you. So feel free to take a look at this book. It just got out. It just came out. And you can go to boycewatkins.com and get a copy. I'm going to do a book tour this spring. So let's get back to Megan. So Megan goes on TikTok and she talks about the fact that her father took his own life because she married this Black man. And so one of the responses I saw was someone said, "Please don't let yourself believe that that's the reason. He was severely mentally ill. If he did that, don't take that blame. Hugs and hope to you." So I think that would probably be the biggest thought that I wanted to share for any young person or really any older person, anybody in who's still got parents. You may be seeing some of this. Is I really think that when you're talking about living your life, you have to live your life, man. I just really, and so I guess it's like I'm talking to both the child and the parent. If you are that parent who's putting emotional weight on your kids because of your personal biases or your personal issues, please stop doing that. Please stop doing that. It's heavy for them because your child is loyal to you and they want to connect to you, they want to look up to you, but you're really pushing your luck. You're overplaying your hand when you are constantly putting your emotional shit on top of a kid, you know. And I can just say is I had a uncle who I loved very much, and I was really loyal to him, and I used to follow him around when I was a little kid. And unfortunately, he had some mental health issues, and he was kind of not. He was struggling a lot, in and out of jail, just kind of always feeling sorry for himself and everything else. And I remember that, growing up, trying to look up to him, trying to like, he was my hero, like, because he was big, he was tall, he was 6'3", 250 pounds. So to me, he was like this big giant, and I just really looked up to him. And I stopped looking up to him when I was about 12, because at 12 was when I started realizing this dude is a little bit of a loser. He's not somebody I can depend on. He's not somebody. He's somebody that's gonna come to me with his own pathetic energy, and it was very draining for me. And I felt like I was carrying that weight, and it just wasn't cool. And I carried that weight up until the day he died, 30 years later. He died. I think maybe I try to remember how old I was. Maybe I was 40 and he was about 8 years older than me. And I sat there and just watched this man struggle for 30, 40 years, and I get it. He had a mental health issue, but it was really hard, and maybe some people can't help it. Maybe some people are just broken and that's just all that there is. If you're in that category where you're broken and you can't fix your mindset, again, this is where therapists come into play, or get some outside perspectives on how you can be a more supportive parent to your child as opposed to putting all your crap on top of them. You shouldn't be calling your child for money on a regular basis. You shouldn't be putting your emotional problems on your child. Your daughter is not your best friend. Your son should not be your fake husband. Just all of that stuff. You see this happen a lot in a lot of communities. And I just really want to say that when you do that to your kid, you're really punishing them, because your child's 21 and they can't be 21. They can't figure life out. They can't figure out, okay, how am I going to navigate this thing, this complex thing called life. Instead, they dealing with your shit. They dealing with stuff that you never fixed from 1982 because you forgot that you're old now. You're not a kid anymore. You can't um what you want and what you're thinking about can't be the top priority. Your dating life at 55 it should not take precedent over your son's dating life at 23. I just don't like that. And I think that if you're a child and you're in that category where your parent is dumping that stuff on you, let me just say this as a 51-year-old, like, let that stuff go. Walk away from that and don't feel guilty. Just say, look, I'm sorry, mama. I know you need XYZ. I had a friend, in fact, I'm thinking about examples I've seen in my life. I had a friend one time, true story, and his mama uh basically raised him to be her husband. His mama saw him as the person that does what the husband typically does, because I think she even had a husband, but he just wasn't very dependable. But her son was. And so every time her son had a girlfriend, she would just interfere. Anybody ever seen mamas like that that literally get jealous of their son's girlfriends? Anybody ever seen that? So anyway, like and I remember talking to one of his girlfriends one time because she called me because she felt like exhausted because she couldn't get him to grow up because he had another wife, which was his mother. And so she said, every time she said, this lady, she'll have him all day long. He'll take her around, he'll take her to the mall and do this and do that. And then the minute I get home from work and we decide that we're gonna do something together, she will call him and say that she needs him to take her to the store. And she'll be like, he already took you to the store. And it was kind of sad because this guy literally, I think he never got married. Like, I think he was 45, 50 years old, he still wasn't married, because he was his mother's husband. And so every woman that came along and tried to have a relationship with this man was gonna get the side eye from his mama, who was basically his jealous wife. And I just think that's so unfair to everybody. Get your own damn man. Like, stop making your husband into, or making your son into your husband. That's crazy. So that's I think that was the thing that came to my mind when I saw this thing that happened with this poor girl. I really hope, and her poor husband. I mean, I don't know if I feel sorry for him or sorry for her. I mean, it's her family, but he didn't have to be part of this family. But she put it on TikTok, that her dad took his own life because she married this black man, which to me is a mental health issue on his part. I think that for her, if I were talking to her, I would say you need to get therapy. I would get um, solo therapy because you got a lot of stuff to work through. Because clearly your dad was struggling, and that means you're going to struggle most likely. Number two, because you're going to TikTok with your personal problems, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be talking to a professional. Number two, I would get couples therapy because relationships are hard enough. Just understand, relationships are hard enough to manage, especially in the modern era. Relationships are hard enough to manage without you dealing with a hostile family on top of that. Like, relationships are tough, even if you have a supportive family. But if you have a hostile family, then it's really tough. So I would, if these two came to me and they said, how do we survive and how do we make it through this? I would say, if you got money or you have access, get you some sort of couples counseling. If you can't afford it, then go on YouTube, watch some YouTube videos from some of these professional therapists. If that's too much, then get you a book, read a book together. But you're gonna have to work to maintain this man. I don't believe relationships survive just because you start the relationship. A lot of people think their relationships will survive on autopilot. A lot of people think that their relationships will survive on autopilot. That because you think that he's cute and he has a nice penis, and you think she's pretty and has a nice booty, that somehow y'all gonna find a way to stay together. No, eventually you will not care about how nice her booty looks. You'll see her naked 18,000 times, and if she gets on your nerves, she's gonna get on your nerves even when she's naked. Same thing on the other side. So, couples counseling, to me, especially for families that want to build family empires or legacies, the legacy has to be protected. And so I would probably tell them, get individual therapy and then get couples therapy. And then maybe if you have family members that want to kind of work through this, maybe you get family therapy. Maybe you have a therapist talk to the whole family, because it's totally unfair that that there are relatives that won't speak to him because of what this guy did. I mean, I'd almost want to say that almost comes off as racist, and because it's not their fault that this man made this decision. So You know, I personally would say overall, in terms of the angles that I see on this, there's a lot of stuff there. I think that even though most of us don't have families that have gone through something like this, you probably have a pathetic relative or two that is going to offload their issues onto you. And I personally think you should shake it off. This is where social distancing, I think, comes into play. Also, remember this: the last point I'm gonna make with you guys is life. I try to figure out the meaning of life, what it means to be happy. This is the type of shit I just think about when I'm just laying around, just staring at the ceiling. Um, and one of the things I realize is that a lot of your well-being in life comes down to three main areas: health, wealth, and relationships. In the health area, your physical and mental health are extremely important. We ignore that a lot in this society, and it is to our detriment. If you're out here chasing bread and you're not thinking about your mental health, you're not going to be happy. You're just going to be a rich person who's ready to jump off a building. If you're not thinking about your physical health and you're chasing bread, well, guess what? You're just going to be a rich person who's going to lose all their money because you're going to have to spend all your money on drugs and doctors and hospitals, and then you're going to die too young to really enjoy it. Wealth is important. If you want to have money, give me a yes in the chat. If having money is important to you, give me a yes. If money matters to you, if you want to have money, you have to be financially conscious. Financial consciousness means that money is not going to randomly fall into your bank account. Financial consciousness means that you must have intentionality to have money. Money is not something that just falls out of the sky. It's not something that's going to come to you because you're lucky. It's not something that's going to come to you because you was praying to white Jesus this morning. Money does not come to you just because a white man decided to offer you a wonderful opportunity. Money comes because you do things like you invest and you plan and you save and you hold on to the money that you get. You are strategic in that. So when I talk about wealth, I'm talking about two main areas. One, income, the size of your revenue streams, as well as the number of streams that you have. And also, I'm thinking about financial security. Wealth is, in terms of how fortified are you? If something goes wrong and you lose your job, how long can you survive without a job? Okay, those are a couple key areas in wealth. And then relationships. Think about the maybe 5 or 6 or 10 relationships in your life that matter most, and you should invest in those relationships the same way you invest in your stocks. Investing in a relationship means taking the time to talk to the people that you care about. Investing in relationships might mean taking time to connect to those people and caring about their problems as much as you care about your own. Investing in relationships means being strategic about who you have relationships with, who's in your space. You can't have a beautiful life and have raggedy people all in your space. Raggedy people will infect a beautiful space every day of the week. Raggedy people will infect a beautiful space. They will contaminate your space. So being thoughtful about who you have relationships with, who you socially distance from, all these things matter. And the beautiful part about health, wealth, and relationships is that they all affect each other. If you have bad relationships, it's going to ruin your mental and physical health. You're sleeping with nasty women. Well, eventually you're going to get diseases. You're bringing toxic people into your space. Your mental health will struggle. Um, your mental health affects the types of relationships you have. If you are a person who has not addressed your mental health, then your relationships will fall apart. People won't want to be around you, and all these things affect your wealth. If you have good relationships, then making money is very easy. If you have bad relationships, then making money is very hard because it drains your resources. So all these things are connected to each other, and I hope that you consider that. And also remember that family is your multi-million-dollar asset, and you don't want to throw that away. So anyway, guys, that's it. That's my 2 cents. I hope this conversation was helpful to you. Forgive me if I sounded overly preachy. I think it's because I felt like preaching a little bit because this story kind of triggered me on some level. And I said, I really want to talk about this because I think maybe somebody out there can benefit from what I have to say on this topic. It is all well intended, and I want to see you do well. So God bless you guys. Have a wonderful day, and don't forget my new book is called The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. If you'd like to get a copy, feel free to go to boycewatkins.com. It's designed to be an easy read. It's designed to give you 10 rules and templates you can follow in your family that will put you on a generational wealth trajectory that will last for 200 years. I'm not playing here. We're going big. We're going hard. We're going to be the best. My PhD is in this stuff. I know what I'm talking about. I guarantee this book will change your life. That's what it's designed to do. So feel free to go to my website, boycewatkins.com. And also, we're hosting an event called a Financial Slumber Party on the 13th, Friday the 13th at 11 p.m. We're going to gather on a Zoom in our pajamas. And I invited my wife. She's going to be there too. And in that hour and a half, 2 hours, I'm going to make you the best investor in your family. All the slides will be yours for life. The recording will be yours for life. And best of all, if you buy one ticket, you can bring your whole family. So buy one, get 5 free. So feel free to join us. Go to boycewatkins.com if you'd like to learn more. So God bless you guys. Have a great day. Thank you all for listening. I love you. And don't be marrying into families where people do crazy stuff like this. Talk to you later. Peace.
Here we are, clearing the isms, cataclysm, great. Our people out here struggling, trying to make it in this state. Everybody out here doing it, but we the ones too late. Now family, we the ones who gotta delegate. Get that money in the power, never be fake. Stick to cosign for 3. What did he say? Create jobs, support our own. Educate the same and buy back your home. Got 3 degrees, triple 10. 3 PhDs, now we on the CNN. DBTV, let's talk about negligence. Ignorance is bliss, but we can turn it to intelligence. Believe none of what you hear, half of what you see. Let's break it down here on Dr. Boyce TV. Here we are.